Democracy is a system of government by the whole population or all the eligible members of a state, typically through elected representatives. The three most important steps in democracy were the Greek democracy, Roman Republic, and U.S. Republic. Let's start with the Greek democracy. Also known as the Athenian democracy, this developed around the 5th century BC in the Greek city-state of Athens, comprising of city of Athens and the surrounding territory of Attica, and is the first known democracy in the world. Other Greek cities set up democracies, most following the Athenian model, but none are as well documented as Athens. This is important because it was the birth of democracy. Without Athens, there might never been what is known as democracy. Next is the Roman Republic. The Roman Republic was the area of ancient Roman civilization beginning with the overthrow of the Roman kingdom, traditionally dated from 509 BC and ending to 27 BC with the establishment of the Roman Empire. It was during this period that Rome's control expanded from the city's immediate surroundings to hegemony over the entire Mediterranean world. This was important because it changed democracy. Finally, the U.S. Republic. The United States of America is a federal republic composed of 50 states, a federal district, 5 major self-governing territories, and various possessions. The American Revolution from 1775 to 1783 arose from growing tensions between residents of Great Britain's 13 Northern American colonies and the colonial government, which represented the British Crown. Skirmishes between British troops and colonial militiamen in Lexington and Concord in April 1775 kicked off the armed conflict, and by the following summer, the rebels were waging a full-scale war for their independence. France entered the American Revolution on the sides of the colonists in 1778, turning what had essentially been a civil war into an international conflict. After French assistance helped the Continental Army force the British surrender at Yorktown, Virginia in 1781, the Americans had effectively won their independence, though fighting would never formally end until 1783. This was important because it revived the democracy movement. The Americas took more from the Roman Republic than the true democracy used in Athens. This also gave the world hope for freedom by showing that even a bunch of farmers can overthrow the most powerful empire on earth, giving way to many revolutions, most notably the French Revolution. The American Revolution began with fighting the British over ridiculous taxation of the smallest goods. The Founding Fathers wrote out what is known as the Declaration of Independence to, well, declare independence, as well as write out the Bill of Rights, which is a list of amendments to create the standards of basic human rights given to the people. The French Revolution was a period of far-reaching social and political tension in France that lasted from 1789 until 1799 and was partially carried forward by Napoleon during the later expansion of the French Empire. The revolution overthrew the monarchy, established a republic, experienced violent periods of political turmoil, and finally culminated in a dictatorship under Napoleon that rapidly brought many of its principles to Western Europe and beyond. But how are these two topics related? Well, both wanted to be free from one ruler and freedom from economic instability. Great Britain, the most powerful nation at the time, thought they could rule all of Europe. King George III oppressed the people both religiously and financially, which was not respected by the people. Because of the victory of America, the standards of democracy were set across the world and continue to do so today. The USSR, Great Britain, and Native American culture. 3 entirely different cultures, but how do they handle power, government, authority, and law? Well, let's start with the USSR. Power is defined by the size of the military and weaponry. Authority was given to the short amount of rich and leaders such as Stalin and Gorbachev. The people starved or lived in very poor conditions. The government controlled everything, including the media. The law is very strict and violated many human rights. Law was everything, and there was nothing but law. Great Britain back then at least was ruled by a king, and only the king. Sure, he had his advisors, but he made all the big decisions. It's not like this today, but back then it sure was. They had a standard police force and soldiers guarding the streets. Laws were basic, no stealing, no killing, etc. They were the most powerful nation at the time though, and had pretty much ruled most of Europe, with France as a close second. Native American culture was more undeveloped. It based on small tribes and chiefs as the leaders. They followed beliefs based on their ancestors and spirits with other superstitions. They never had a set nation because they didn't believe in owning land, but were instead split into hundreds of different tribes. They fought, made peace, made trade, and fought some more. They had no real laws, just implied rules. Kind of like the British, don't kill, don't steal, etc., but, not laws. All these cultures are completely different and yet very much the same. We all have leaders, we all have rules, We all have our issues, we all have our pros. Citizenship in basic terms is a legally recognized subject or national of a state or commonwealth, either native or naturalized. Citizenship, the idea of John Locke, an 18th century British political philosopher, are especially important. It is from Locke that we get great nations such as natural rights of man, which influence the Declaration of Independence and our understanding of the right to poverty. These ideas are described in Locke's lengthy essay entitled Second Treatise on Government. How are contemporary democratic governments rooted in Enlightenment ideals? Well, the Enlightenment contributed to the revolution and to American democracy because it was the source of some of the main ideas held by the Founding Fathers. We could see this from the fact that Enlightenment ideas are prominent in the Declaration of Independence. Enlightenment political thinkers believed that monarchy did not make sense as a system of government. They believed that it was not rational to think that God had designated some family to rule over a whole country. Instead, they thought it was more rational to think that all people had to agree to be ruled by their government. Enlightenment thinkers also thought that monarchy was bad because monarchs ruled for their own good, not for the good of the people. These thinkers ask why people would agree to be ruled by the government. They theorize that people agree to be ruled so that the government will protect their basic rights. They want a government that will protect their lives, their freedom, and their property. This, the Enlightenment thinker said, was the correct role for government. These ideas can be seen very clearly in the Declaration of Independence. In that document, Jefferson says, government only has just powers if it rules by the consent of the people. He says that the only reason for government is to protect the people's right. Among those rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We can see that these ideas come directly from the ideas of Enlightenment thinkers. Thus, the Enlightenment contributed to American democracy and the Revolution by coming up with the ideas on which our democracy was founded. What impacts did Greece and Rome have on political systems? Well, we've already covered this a little bit in the first part of the film, but we can review over it once again. Athenian democracy developed around 5th century BC and is the first known democracy recorded around the world. Many took from it, including the Roman Republic, which was an ancient Roman civilization that dated from 509 BC and ending in 27 BC. It was the period that Rome's control expanded from the city's immediate surroundings to most of the Mediterranean world. It changed democracy in quite a large way. It really spread the word of it. What forces led the 19th century failure of democracy in Latin America and Russia? Internal division resulted in internecine wars. For example, Gran Colombia proved too fragile and the South American nation collapsed within 10 years because of many of the political strongmen of this period who came to power were from the military. A strong authoritarian streak marked many of the new governments. There were countless revolts, coups d'etats, and interstate wars, which never allowed Latin America to become united. This was exacerbated by the fact that Latin America is a land of various and very diverse cultures that do not identify with nor have a sense of unity with one another. The Spanish Empire in America was reduced to 3 Caribbean islands, 2 of which being Cuba and Puerto Rico. Santo Domingo was under Spanish rule for some years before definitive independence was achieved. After 3 independence wars in Cuba, the 1898 Spanish-American War ended Spanish colonial rule. Brazil achieved its independence peacefully in 1822, becoming a monarchy, the Empire of Brazil. It retained its territorial integrity following independence as opposed to the fragmentation of Spanish America into separate republics. Brazil was as a large, successful, and stable monarchy until 1889, when the monarchy was overthrown following the abolition of slavery, and República Velha, the Old Republic, was founded. What roles does democracy play in Latin America today? Well, last year, Latin America celebrated its 35th anniversary of what came to be known as the third wave of democratization in the region. At the same time, and in a climate of significant stability from a second phase of 2013 to 2016, of an unprecedented electoral marathon began, during which 34 presidential elections will take place in only 8 years from 2009 to 2016. So far, 26 elections have been held. Never before has the region experienced such an intense and important electoral agenda in such a short period of time.